Welcome to Play by Players, an MLSPA podcast. This show is brought to you by the players and is all about the players, both past and present, who have plied their trade in MLS. You'll hear about each player's journey into the game, their careers and life after the game, on the field and off. It's all on the table. Now here's your host, former MLS player, Bobby Boswell.
Welcome to another episode of Play by Players. I am your host, Bobby Boswell. Today we are joined by a Canadian international. He has played over 280 games across MLS, the MLS playoffs, Open Cup, and the CONCACAF Champions League, and is approaching the 50-goal milestone in MLS play. He scored 52 goals with 20 assists across all competitions. He has represented the Canadian men's national team 19 times. He was the 2014 MLS Rookie of the Year. He is a two-time Open Cup champion, winning the tournament not with one, but two different teams. He has won the Supporter Shield. Please welcome to the podcast, Tesho Akindele.
Yeah, that was a great intro. Thanks for having me. It's funny, if we would have done this 1 month ago, you couldn't have said two-time Open Cup champion, so I'm glad we waited till now.
Hey, that's what we were thinking. We knew you were going to get there. We knew you were going to ball out and play. So, how is everything going in Orlando? I know you guys are gearing up for a playoff run here.
Yeah, I think, as you know, if your team's winning, things are going good. So, we just won the Open Cup. Obviously, we've had a pretty good run of form for the last month or so. So, just everything is on a high right now. The spirits are high. I feel like we're in a good spot for the playoff run where we kind of control our own destiny, which is always nice. And yeah, we're confident, man. Just really enjoying it.
All right. Well, that's the now. Let's talk about the past. And I know you said you'd before we started that you'd seen or listened to some of these. So I know you're familiar with the format. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning. We're going to start back in Calgary, where you were born. You're the son of a Nigerian father and a Canadian mother. It's my understanding that you moved around a bunch as a child.
Yeah, I moved a few times around Canada, Calgary, Mississauga, Winnipeg. And then I finally moved to Colorado, which is where I spent kind of most of my life growing up.
Well, it's funny that you brought up, I played in I think it was called the Robbie Cup growing up, which was a big tournament in Canada. And we played a team from Mississauga, and they were like the most intimidating guys that I've ever played with at any level. But those are kind of like spread out all over the place. It's a bit of a nomadic experience as a young guy. Do you remember any of those moves around, or is it all kind of just one big blur at such a young age?
I definitely remember it. I mean, it's funny because the move that kind of was the hardest for me was moving from Winnipeg to Colorado. I really didn't want to go. I think I was 7 at the time. I was so upset. And looking back, I'm so glad I left because, I mean, nothing against Winnipeg, but Colorado was a great place. Winnipeg would have 10 feet of snow at times in the winter. So, Colorado, I was glad to be able to move there. So overall, it really turned out well. And then I think maybe it helped me adapt as a person to just be able to, you just kind of got to find your way to fit in different environments with different types of people. So I think that's a skill I picked up by moving so much.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. I saw that you have family that's still all over Canada. I think Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver, Kelowna. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's somewhere in British Columbia. Do you, in looking at your family being all over, I'm assuming you come from a big family. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty big family, I guess, on both sides, so a lot of the family in Canada, there's some extended family too going on there. And then, my dad's side of the family, there's still a lot of people in Nigeria. My family is really all over the world, right? Like all over Canada. I have family in Colorado. My sister lives in Amsterdam, about to move to London. I have family in Nigeria. So we're kind of just covering the whole map right now. It's nice.
And I understand that your dad was a soccer player. At least he tells people that. Is that true? Is that where you got your love of the game?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Nigerians just have it in the blood. So as soon as I could kick a ball, he had me doing so. One of my earliest memories even was we would play balloon soccer kind of in the living room. So he would just pop the ball up on his head and balance it and walk over to my goal. I'd be slamming into him, couldn't budge it, but. So he definitely got me in the game, and he coached me my entire life from the time I was 11 to 18. So I owe him just so much in terms of getting me here to living the dream that I always wanted.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So you end up in just outside of Denver in Colorado, and I actually saw a story where it talked about you kind of had an identity in Canada because you played soccer, and then you go to Colorado and you've got to find a new team. I'm imagining you were a baller at all levels, but with your dad being the coach, what team did you end up with in Colorado doing club soccer? I know that the Colorado Storm North was a team. I feel like it's hard to find teams now because the Rapids and these MLS clubs, they absorb all the teams and kind of change the names. But tell me a little bit about playing club soccer I'm assuming your dad was the coach, so you played for your dad when you moved to Colorado.
Yeah, so the first club I started at with competitive soccer was called Broomfield Blast. So it's just kind of it's 30 minutes north of Denver. And my dad was just able to get the coaching job for the competitive team there. So that's where I went. And then we did end up switching to Storm North, which was closer to my house. And then Storm North now kind of got absorbed by the Rapids, like you were saying, they're part of the Rapids program. Because when I was growing up was right kind of before the academy started. It started when I was 16, I think. So a lot of the clubs and my experience is just very different than what the kids are experiencing now with it's kind of academy or nothing now. But for me, I was playing club soccer and we were only playing in our state. I was playing high school soccer for, half the year basically. So it was a very different experience.
Yeah. And so I saw that you were offered to go into the academy, and that would have meant that I'm very vocal on this podcast about, I think kids should play high school soccer and college soccer. Well, that's just my opinion. But I know that they offered you, an entry into the academy, and you said no because, or why did you say no? Before I put words in your mouth.
Yeah, honestly, so at that time, I think I was 16 or 17, and there was kind of two reasons. One was back then you had to pay for everything. So it was $5,000 a year to play in the academy, which is crazy. And I also had already basically knew where I was going to go to school. I was going to go to a small school in Colorado. So I was I already know what my next step is. There's no reason for me to go to the academy. And my dad was coaching my team. So it just felt like as a 16 or 17-year-old, I didn't need to shake things up because I didn't really see any benefit for me doing so.
Okay, and then before we go to college, North Glen High School was your school, the Norsemen. What's a Norseman, by the way?
It's like a Viking,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, but I just want to, don't assume on the podcast people call you out. Well, what was it like for you, going to North Glen High School? I know a big part of your journey is education's a pretty big focus, and I know they added a STEM program either right when you got there or right before you got there, which it kind of is a reoccurring theme when we get to your college. But obviously education was very important to you, and tell us what North Glen was like.
Yeah, I mean, so at the time when I went to North Glen, they didn't have the STEM program, which was really unfortunate for me because I was, really trying to push myself kind of academically. I had taken a lot of high level classes, and then by my senior year, they literally had no math or science classes left for me to take at the school. They just couldn't provide the resources. So it was a big bummer at the time. If I would have gone now, I would have been able to take advantage of it. But another thing going on at the school was there was a lot of kids who were really just performing badly in school, and I think that's kind of where my parents drilled so much into me, the importance of education, because I was surrounded by a lot of people who were just blowing school off. And the school, even nowadays, they're doing pretty good, but I just went back and there's still some kids really struggling to just put it together. So I'm trying to spread that message. I think getting a good education and having my parents just drill that into me is what put me in a position to succeed. Even if I didn't play soccer, I think I would be successful because of my passion for education. So I'm hopefully trying to send a good message back to the kids at my school about that. I was actually able to go there a few months ago when we played the Rapids, go out to the practice and talk to the kids and tell them, because the coach was hey, half of our team is failing and they can't even play high school soccer because they're failing the classes. So I'm trying to tell them guys, it's not cool to do that.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you got to do that. I'm sure it was a big thing for them to see someone that kind of came from where they came from, and that's always impactful. I always say not only for the kids, it's impactful for you as a former player or as a player that was at that school as well. So That's really cool. At what point, I know in here there was a point where you represented the Canadian youth national team for I think the 17s. How did that come about? You move away from Canada at 7, 8 years old, and you're in Colorado playing, club soccer, high school soccer, and then all of a sudden you're getting called into a camp.
Yeah, so basically I guest played with the Rapids in one tournament. I think they called it like MLS Youth Cup or something back then. I think it's like the GA Cup now. So I guest played with the Rapids in that tournament, and we played against Toronto FC just kind of by coincidence. And I played really well, and somehow the coach of Toronto FC found out I was Canadian, and because I had no contact with anybody from the Canadian soccer from Canada soccer, and they found out I was Canadian. They saw I was playing really well, and they called me into a camp. So that was a really cool experience for me as like a 17-year-old. I got to go to Costa Rica. We got to go to a national team game, like watch Costa Rica play maybe Nicaragua or somebody in World Cup qualifying. So it was a really eye-opening experience for me as a kid. Kind of introduced me to really have like the professional side of soccer that, as just only playing club, I hadn't really thought of or experienced much.
And when you were in Costa Rica, did you imagine you'd be playing CONCACAF Champions Cups and World Cup qualifying in those places later on in life?
No way, no way. And even like, it's funny because so we were on the bus, we were going to watch the Costa Rican national team, but we were just the kids. And a lot of the people on the street were lined up to see the national team. They thought we were the national team. So they're cheering for us. And it was like, wow, look at this, like we're going to the stadium, everyone's cheering for us. And then, just 2 weeks ago, we're driving on our bus to the Orlando City Stadium, and it's kind of the same thing. But now they were actually there for me, we had all of our Orlando City fans outside the stadium, like waiting for us to come. So it's kind of like, man, I can't believe it really went full circle like that.
That's awesome. You talked about playing in the Generation Next or the GA type tournament. I would imagine that's probably where you are also recognized by some college coaches. I know that you were recruited by, I think, Santa Barbara. Talk to me a little bit about what your expectations were coming out of high school, where, you're representing Canada at this point. So you're looking at some international experience. What were you thinking in terms of, it sounds like you'd already made up your mind, but I know you were recruited. Did you at least consider going to those schools, or was it just more of an entertainment for you and your family thing?
Honestly, I never really considered going anywhere. I was a real kind of homebody type of person. I liked Colorado. And funny enough, so my dad used to work at the Coors factory, which is 2 blocks away from the School of Mines. So when I was a kid, he would take us to the summer camps over there. He'd go to work and then he'd pick us up. And the coach who was there when I was 10 years old was still the coach when I was going to college. So I had known him. His name is Frank. I had known him for my entire life. I was always into math and science. That was an engineering school. So I really never considered going anywhere else. I didn't do a tour anywhere else. I didn't seriously talk to anyone, as I just kind of took the next step that felt really natural to me.
And you said School of Mines. It's a Colorado School of Mines. You're the Ore Diggers. We love mascots. You've got some pretty cool ones on here. It's in Golden, Colorado. If old MLS fans, if they say that sounds familiar, he can't be the only one. My old DC United fans will know that Craig Thompson went there. You're a little bit more of a household name with not only your name, but your style of play. I think you stood out a little more, but can you just tell people, I know you talked about it being a math and, an engineering school really. But can you just tell people what it was like going there? It's not necessarily the biggest school, but it's big for a kid coming out of high school.
Yeah, it just kind of was a continuation of my focus on education, I guess. So when picking a school, like I went there for academics more so than I did for soccer, because it's one of the top engineering schools in the country. So it's really rigorous kind of academically, but luckily the soccer team was really good. My first year there, I think we were ranked top 3 in the country. Every year I was there, we were a really competitive team. It was a great experience. And like you talked about earlier, like you're a big advocate of kids playing college. Man, I loved it. I loved playing in college. I loved going to college. And I see like some benefits sometimes for the kids who miss it, but I also kind of feel bad for people sometimes because it was such a good and like important time in my life to mature as a person and a player.
Yeah, and I've heard some stuff that you've been on, and you're really vocal about transitions, right? And transitions are tough. And college is a great place because everyone's within your age range, right? And so, you're all having kind of the same problems and you're able to relate. Whereas, nowadays you've got 15-year-old kids coming into a locker room with a 36-year-old guy on his way out. And their journeys is very different, not relatable. I played with a guy that was older than another guy's parents. It's just hard to relate to that stuff. So, I do want to tell people, I normally go through and look at, notable people, and I'm a bit of a history. I wouldn't call myself a history buff, but I like going and looking at the history of these things. You were a notable person on everything, so that's awesome. But I would encourage other people to go look up the School of Mines and go check out their notable alums. The school is so old, and they have produced some incredible people that are, running our government, running, things around the world. For the Houstonians listening, I thought this was really cool. George Rufus Brown graduated from there, and people say, well, I don't know who that is, but if you're in Houston, we have this massive, massive convention center. It's called the George R. Brown Convention Center. And then the School of Engineering at Rice University is named after him. He graduated from Colorado School of Mines. So I always say it's really cool to go see, you might have a different story for someone from that school, and where you live, wherever you're listening to this. So that was about School of Mines. Back to Tesho. On the soccer field, you tore it up there, and you talked about your first year. You were Rookie of the Year. You were first or second team All-American every year that you played there. You scored an outrageous number of goals. It was 76, which is a record. That had to really build from freshman year, you kind of set the tone, but it had to really build your confidence as a player having that success.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like I said, when I initially went to the school, I loved playing soccer, obviously, but I wasn't really thinking too seriously about being a professional. And then kind of midway through my freshman year, I was doing pretty good. And then there was one week we played 3 games in a row, and I scored 10 goals in those 3 games. I scored like 3, 3, and 4. And then that's kind of when it all blew up for me. Like I was getting interviewed on the news, like Sports Illustrated came out to my school. And then I was thinking, man, you know what? I can really be a professional soccer player. Like that's the moment in my life when I feel like it really clicked for me. And then, yeah, so my mindset kind of changed after that. And the rest of my college career, I was grinding a little bit differently than I had been before, because I kind of had that goal in mind that, okay, this is serious. I could actually be a soccer player, not just, someone who enjoys college soccer and then becomes an engineer.
And I would imagine that you had a lot of other colleges trying to come in and poach you after your first year. Did you even consider that, or was that just out of the question?
Yeah, I did. Definitely. There was a lot of guys were hitting me up that you need to transfer this. The only way you can become a professional and all this. But like I said, I knew the coach, Frank. He was there I knew him from the time I was 10 years old. I still talk to Frank every week right now. And I told him about this. I said, Frank, all these guys are telling me if I want to be a pro, I got to go. And he's like, I can get you to be a professional. Like he had so much confidence in that, and he put that in me, and it came true. I think like just his guidance as a coach, but also as like off the field as a person, I think he just helped me just tremendously. So I'm really glad I made that decision. And I didn't really seriously consider leaving just because of him and the relationship I had and still have with him.
Yeah, and I again, not to hype college up anymore, but it's the first time you're away from your actual parents and your actual father, and then you have usually most of these coaches are older guys, and like I still talk all the time to both my coach, head coach, and the assistant coach in my life today. They're still alive, and I still talk to them a lot. So, again, it's the impact these people have, and it sounds like he really put some belief in you that not only are you going to go pro, you're going to go pro here. And that had to be a really big booster for you.
For sure. And I like it means a lot when your coach believes in you, and he believed me. And I mean, he would chew me out too. Like he really held me to a high standard, which I needed. Like some days I was like, oh my gosh, Frank, like leave me alone. I already scored a goal. Why are you screaming at me? But I needed that, like to just like really stay disciplined. And he was just saying, like, you're not competing with the people here. You're competing with everybody in the world right now if you really want to be a professional.
That's awesome. What I saw a little tidbit in there about one game for the Colorado Foxes PDL team. Was that just like a one and done? Like, no, this isn't for Tesho, or what happened there?
Yeah, I just played one game with them. I don't even know why. Like it was far away from my house, kind of thing. It just wasn't very convenient, so I just never ended up taking it seriously. I think I played terrible that game too. I think I missed like a wide open tap in. Like I fell down and like swinging. So I was just like, you know what, this isn't for me. Nothing against the team. Like they had some good games and good players, but it never kind of worked out for me really.
Yeah, I had some bad PDL experiences, so I get that. All right, well, let's talk about the combine. I remember this combine for a couple of reasons. This class was not short of confidence, and I love that. Like I love the guys and the things they were saying. The headliners were Christian Dean and my man Steve Birnbaum. They created a lot of buzz, but then all of a sudden, after day one, this D2 kid, from the Colorado School of Mines is just he scored a goal and he's creating all this buzz. Talk to me a little bit about the combine and why you were so confident and able to do so well. I know that later in the thing you say, oh, I didn't play that well on the second day or later on, but you still exuded confidence, I felt like, from the quotes I read, and that you knew that you could hang and you were going to make it into the league.
Yeah, I'm glad it came off that way because I don't know if I was really feeling like that at the time. So, like even before the combine, I didn't know until maybe a month before, and then I got a call. Like they had released a list of the initial combine people. It's all Division I players, and I'm Division II. So I was like, man, I might not get into the combine. And then I got a call. You're in the combine. So it was me and one other Division II guy and a bunch of other D1 guys. And luckily, like you said, I played the very first game of the combine, and fans got to think about it like what it's like for a player. They don't do the combine anymore, but you're a college kid. You go out, you're in a field kind of in the middle of nowhere, and the only people watching are MLS coaches and GMs. They're like right on the touchline, so it's a lot of pressure for kids. So I mean, I was pretty nervous to be honest, but I did score. I played well, and yeah, I just like I'm a big believer in kind of like mentality and stuff like that, positive visualization. So literally like the bus going there and back, when I was in my hotel room, like I was just like visualizing scoring goals, playing well, like doing well, and it happened. I was nervous in the moment, but I was really trying to like hype myself up kind of behind the scenes.
And then do you remember, I think I saw that and like in the history of the combine, they've never had so many teams that try to interview the same guy. Like most of the teams do their due diligence and their homework before, and they have, they kind of think, oh, I'm going to get this guy in this range. Do you remember doing all those interviews with all the different teams? And if you do, what do you remember from that?
Yeah, it was definitely a whirlwind. Like I know the other guys, they would have like 4 interviews or something, which was it seemed pretty normal. And then I had like 9. I had so many, and it's just because nobody knew who I was, like, and they were like, like people would be like, who are you? The one interview that sticks out for me is funny is like Columbus. They had a cabana on the beach, and I was like, wow, Columbus is doing it real nice. Like I got like escorted back to this cabana, so that's like one that kind of stuck out. But it was a real whirlwind of a time, and I think it's just because no one knew who I was coming into the combine. No one had scouted me. Nobody was talking about me. Nothing.
Well, the quote, and we'll move on. The quote that I remember was something along the lines of, people were talking about the D2 status, and you said, "Look, I'm out here wearing MLS Combine shirt, not School of Mines. Like I'm here, and I'm playing, I'm scoring, and that that's what I'm doing." And I like that. For me, it's all about, didn't matter if you went to an ACC school or UCLA. If you could play, you could play, and that's really what the pro level is all about. It's just about finding guys. If you didn't go to college and you're a great player, you make it. If you went to college, you're a great player, you're still going to make it. So
I think this league especially is about that because you have guys on the team. Like you'll have a guy starting at number 10 on one side that is a college player, and on the other side is a multi-million-dollar guy. And sometimes the college guy plays better, So it's like if you can play, you can play.
That's it. They call it the world's most democratic game for a reason. It obviously paid off. You impressed not only with your play, but with your interview. And did you have any idea that you were going to get taken by Dallas, or was that just out of the blue?
very out of the blue. Literally, I didn't even go to the combine or to the draft, sorry, because I didn't think I would get drafted in the first 2 rounds. So I was like, I was just watching it at my house, like my college house. My parents came over, my friends were over, and I had no idea. And I remember, I think Taylor Twelman or someone said, "Oh yeah, this draft they have like 10 good players, and after that it really falls off." And I was like, "Hey, screw you, man!" Like, because I didn't think I'd be drafted in the top 10, and then it was a real surprise to get drafted by Dallas. Like, and as early as I did, I completely was not expecting it.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, he was taken sixth in the first round. So there you went from not even thinking, maybe you're not a good player according to Taylor Twelman to now you are a good player according to Taylor Twelman. You were the highest drafted Division II player, which is another cool title to own. What are you thinking? Now you're looking at, okay, now I'm going to the pro level and I'm going to go to Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, just the turnaround between getting drafted. So it's like that morning, I have no idea if I'm going to get drafted. I get drafted in the middle of the day, and they say, okay, like in 2 days, you have to pack up and be in Dallas. So it's really crazy the turnaround, and you don't have really much time to process anything. But I was just happy. I was like, man, this is really happening. And I'm a hardworking guy, so I was like, I'm just going to go in there and work. Like that's what I'm going to do is work, work, work.
And then I'm as a Houston player, I'm very familiar with all the Dallas teams. Dallas is always a tough team. I don't care who you are. They've always been a tough team to play against for a long, long time, especially while you were there. What do you remember? Do you remember anyone helping you out early on in your first year or two?
Yeah, for sure. I'm like a special shout out to Blas Perez, who people know, like a Panamanian legend, FC Dallas legend, like just a great goal scorer. And he helped me out with so much. And just one thing too, like with Blas is the guy's not fast. He's not strong. He's not like super technical, but he scores goals, and it's because he's thinking at a different level than the other players. So just kind of watching the way he was thinking and maybe getting into the heads of defenders. I'm sure he bugged you like playing. I'm sure everyone hated playing against that
I
guy.
probably, I probably have a scar or two up here from he had like the pointiest elbows
Yeah.
like in the world.
Yeah. So he's one of those guys that you hate to play against, but you love him when he's on your team. Like he was constantly like drilling stuff into me, and even confidence. Like I remember one day the ball was coming across and it was an open goal, and I like controlled it and then shot it in. And he was like, "You should have the confidence to like put that away. Like believe you're gonna put it away." And just like telling me like you need to believe in yourself. You're a good player, and so many things Blas did for me. He was a huge help.
Yeah, and I remember, I don't know why, maybe we were up there for a reserve game or something, maybe we were training, and I just remember seeing, the team was jogging, and he was like holding court, right, making all the guys laugh, and then I think some of the staff members were, they were hugging him, and so again, he is one of those guys, and I think I was kind of like that too, where you didn't like playing against him, you thought he was kind of a not a good person maybe, but it seemed like his people really liked him, and that kind of resonated with me, and it actually changed my tune a little how I played against him. I thought, he wants to be angry, he plays angry, I try to be nice to him, right, just to see if that works, and it didn't. But whatever he did, in helping you, it really worked, and I know a lot of that was your hard work that you put in. You were in your first year, you won Rookie of the Year, you scored 7 goals and had 3 assists. And that really kind of puts you on the map for a couple of reasons, and we'll get into those. But for MLS, it puts you on the map. That had to be a huge confidence boost for you having some success early on.
Yeah, that was huge. And I mean, kind of going back to like the visualization stuff, like I had like Rookie of the Year, like I wanted to win Rookie of the Year, and I think I like taped it on my mirror or something. Like that was my goal from the beginning. And for the first half of the year, it seemed very far away because I wasn't even in the 18 for like the first 10 or 12 games. But I still was like shooting for that, and to end up achieving that was so amazing. And with so many good players too that were also coming, like Steve Birnbaum, for example, was like one of the top contenders, and he had an amazing season. I think they don't like giving it to defenders, but so maybe
Yeah,
that's why he didn't win it.
he was. I was with him. He was mad because he didn't start the season off playing a lot, and that's tough, right? You had a lot of games, you got a lot of burn, and Steve came on later, but to be fair to you, I think it was like 8. You got like almost 90% of the vote, which that's a pretty big number. It wasn't like 56-40. It was 83 or 86%, which is, that means that everyone from fans to staff to GMs and even people like me on another team, I can't vote for my own team. I took those things seriously. I voted for the guys that I thought deserved it. And, that pissed guys off in the locker room, but at the end of the day, I would take it serious, and I hoped other guys would too. So I think that was very deserving. The thing I want to talk about, which was really what created the buzz, was after a successful year, U.S. national team fans got really excited. They said, "Oh, we got a guy scoring goals. He's young." I remember this. I don't want to call it controversy, but I remember it was kind of a big deal when you ended up deciding to play for Canada. But it was my understanding that you actually said no to Canada first, just to see if you were going to get an offer. But then was there like a failure on a passport side, or what ended up going into the decision for you to represent Canada at the senior level?
Yeah, I went to a U.S. camp first is what happened, and then but I didn't play in a game, so I could keep my options open. And I ended up going with Canada. That's the team that my whole life, like I didn't become an American citizen until I was 22 or something. So my whole life it was Canada. Like you said, when I was a 17-year-old, I represented Canada. My family was in Canada. It felt right, and I think I made the right decision because I was able to play a lot of games and experience a lot of things at the national team level that I don't know if I would have been able to if I would have gone with the U.S. So I'm really happy with my decision. Like the experiences were unbelievable, and to represent like the country that I was born in was just a huge honor for me.
Yeah, and just I've been up to Canada and played a bunch up there. It's definitely a different place in terms of the environment. I always, it was a lot of fun for us to play and then go to a sports bar after to eat a meal, and your game highlights are all over the news and Sports Center's covering it. I just feel like it's a very different sport and coverage wise and importance in Canada than it is in the US. Can you talk a little bit about how great the Canadian fans are and the experience of playing up there is?
Yeah, I mean, the Canadian fans are amazing, and they've been put through it, to be fair. Like for a long time, Canada was not performing at, maybe the level that we should have been given like the amount of resources the country has and stuff. But, to those fans credit, like they stuck with us through the tough times, and now they're, able to reap those benefits because the Canadian team right now is completely different than when I was in 2015 when I first went. The team is completely different now. The quality of the players is unbelievable. The depth is on a different level. So, there was support for us back then when we weren't even performing that well, so now the support is just unbelievable. I think like you see some of these games when there's snow and it's like negative whatever degrees and the stadium is packed out with fans, so the dedication is real. And I think like they deserve the team that's being put on the field right now.
Yeah, I said it. We were all caught up in this U.S. versus Mexico. Who's the better team in the region? And I say, I have a terrible joke, but it's like Canada's like, we're on top of both of you. Yeah, and
it's a real dad joke from you right
yeah,
there.
that's a great dad joke, but it's true, right? It's like, no, we're gonna go ahead and win the group, and we're actually gonna go make some noise here. So it's really cool to see, and again, we'll get into a little at the end about the depth and what you're hoping for here, but let's get back to Dallas. 2016 was a huge year for Dallas. You guys won the Supporter Shield. You won the Open Cup. You got eliminated in kind of a wild series with the eventual champions. I think the Sounders. You scored. I think y'all were up like 2-0, and then they scored one to kind of put that to bed. But that's just an incredible thing in Dallas to win 2 trophies for a team that really hasn't won a whole lot. That had to be a special moment for you.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, and obviously just like so much credit to the environment that I was in. The quality of the players that were on those teams were just amazing. Even the guys who were on the bench or left out of the 18 are guys who have been 10-year MLS vets, so the team was very good. And then the coaching staff also too, like you had Oscar, who's funnily enough like my coach now, but he came and he maybe changed the team a little bit and won some trophies. Then he comes over here to Orlando with the same kind of staff that he had and wins trophies. So I think obviously like being a part of that was great. And as a player, it comes down to the environment you're in a lot. So I was just put into a winning environment, and I think, that helped me succeed.
Yeah. I looked at those rosters. There's some wild names on there. Guys I hated playing against. I was terrified to get isolated one-on-one with some of the
Castillo,
guys that what's that?
Fabian
Yeah,
Castillo was like
Fabian, and then
every
it's like,
nightmare's
and then
defender.
they get rid of him, and I'm like, thank goodness, and they bring in Barrios, and I'm like, oh no, like
Yeah.
it never ended. It was like, oh, it's just my worst nightmare. But El Pescandito was there for a little bit, I think, when you were there.
Yeah, he was. He was.
I always say that he was the hardest player that I played against in MLS consistently, because he was one play he's as strong as an ox and he's throwing an elbow, and the next play you get firm and he just falls over and rolls around for a while. And so I think you really highlighted on it with Blas and just the guys you had. It was a really good group of players. You played over 130 games with Dallas. You end up getting traded at the end of 2018 to Orlando. Was this I know kind of at the end your time in Dallas, you'd fallen out of favor a little bit, or who knows what it was. We can talk about that. What were you thinking? Did you ask for the move, or did it kind of catch you out of the blue?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like I had fallen out of favor a little bit, but the team, they did offer me like a bona fide offer. They said that they were interested in keeping me, but I told them, look, I think it's better for me to go, and they agreed. They were like, you know what? Yeah, we'll look for a place for you to go to. And they called me when Orlando reached out. They said, does that sound like a good spot for you? I thought it was great, and the coach at Orlando was telling me he wants to play me a striker, which is kind of my favorite position. I had played a lot of winger in Dallas, and they're saying, we believe that you could be a good striker for us. So I thought it was a perfect fit, and so it was a really good like separation. I think it was time, like all good things come to an end kind of thing. I had a great time at Dallas. I thought the way I moved on, like the ownership, the coaches, GM, everybody treated me with a lot of respect. So, nothing but respect for that club for sure.
Would your wife say it was a good time to get traded?
Yeah, she might not, because literally. So, I got traded and I had to come to Orlando early. She's 9 months pregnant. We're in preseason. So her and her dad drove from Dallas to Orlando. 4 days later, my first son is born. So she drove like cross country, had a baby 4 days later. She's a superhero. Maybe at the time she wouldn't have said so, but in hindsight, like she loves it here in Orlando as well, and it really worked out for our family.
I love that story. I had two. I call them preseason babies. I had two preseason babies, and my wife is still to this day not thrilled about that. So, well, you talked about the coach. Was it O'Connor? Was it James?
Yep.
Yeah. So James is there when you get there. And then by the end of the year, it's kind of ironic, right? You're back with Oscar, which is kind of amusing to me, only because I assume you like Oscar. Everyone seems to like Oscar. He's a really intriguing figure from afar. He looks like he is a fun guy to play for, and that I think he's pretty talented and knows what he's doing. We talked about winning hardware at multiple places. You pretty much played, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, from your youth, right? You played for your dad for most of your life. Then you play for, you get to know this college coach. You play for him for most of your life. And now at your professional level, you've pretty much played for the same coach for most of your life. Is that pretty fair assessment?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it really is. Looking back at it, I never thought about it like that. And it's so funny that I got reconnected with Oscar after being separated. But yeah, I have only really kind of had three coaches my entire life, even from the time I was a kid.
And tell the listeners a little bit about, what you like about Oscar, just because obviously he likes you in terms of you've had some longevity with him, and he's trusted you in some big moments to go out, and you've delivered as well for the teams when he's put you out there.
I think, the main thing with Oscar is just like his dedication to the game and to his craft. Like nobody outworks this guy, and his staff too. Like it's not just him, it's his assistant coaches, his strength and conditioning coach. These guys are working, they're thinking about soccer literally 24/7. It's unbelievable. And I always like to tell one story that I think sums it up pretty well. When I was in Dallas, we practiced in the morning, 9 a.m. or whatever. And at 10 p.m., Oscar calls me, hey, can you and a couple guys come in for a meeting? So I was like, okay. We come into the facility 10 p.m. Oscar's wearing his full kit. He's wearing cleats in his office, 10 p.m., like drawing stuff on the whiteboard. Like, what do you guys think about this and that? And it's like, man, maybe you should go to sleep. Like, it's 10 p.m. We have training tomorrow morning. Like, but that's just who he is, like he's super, super dedicated to the game. And I think that like that kind of passion is just contagious. You said he's the kind of guy you'd like to play for. It's true, man, because he fires you up. Like he's really about it. Like you could tell his passion, and it's infectious. It's contagious.
Yeah, no, it's been great. With I think he's kind of really added some stability to the club. You recently got, I think, your 100th MLS game with Orlando City. Congrats to that. I'm originally from Tampa, Florida. I grew up going to Tampa Bay Mutiny games, and to say that they weren't well attended would be an understatement. Rest in peace to the Mutiny. But when I watch these Orlando games, especially, I got to go down to Orlando before they got their new stadium. But it seems like this new stadium, the games seem packed all the time. The fans seem kind of like typical crazy Florida people, just over the top, awesome, to play there, terrible to be the opposing team. I say it must be nice to go from, Frisco, where it's Frisco, and I can talk trash about Dallas as a former Houston player, but, I kid, but it's got to be really great to experience kind of the new MLS in Orlando. Can you talk a little bit about their fan base and what it's like playing games there?
Yeah, I mean, the fans are amazing. Behind one of the goals, they have the big supporter section, the wall, and those guys are just jumping up and down, screaming nonstop. So they really are like the heartbeat of the stadium. And I think like one interesting thing going from Dallas to Orlando is in Dallas, you have the Cowboys, the Rangers, the Stars, you have all different professional sports teams. And then, the soccer team is up in Frisco. It's kind of outside of the city. So there's just a lot of competition for sports fans when you're in Dallas, whereas in Orlando, there's two teams, there's us and the Magic. And, I think like when you're driving around the city, you see a lot of Orlando City gear. You see it on people's houses, like you see the flags, you see the bumper stickers, you see people wearing the t-shirts, which is, in Dallas, like you would see people wearing all kinds of jerseys. And here it's like, if you're a sports fan, you're an Orlando City fan. So it's really cool to be in that environment. And I'll be like walking my kids on the path by my house, and people say like, "Oh, great game, like good hustle out there," like whatever, No one's ever like rude or intrusive, but people like just give you a nod, and it's really cool.
Well, I think it helps that you just helped bring the first trophy to them as an MLS club, and that you guys won the Open Cup championship. Was it sweeter the second time around?
I think it was because, maybe I'm more grown up. I think I was just more aware of the moment. Like I was just able to kind of experience it more and really like understand like what was about to happen. So I think it was sweeter the second time just because of my maturity as a person, basically.
Yeah. And then, speaking of second time, it was the second time a team from Florida had won the Open Cup. The St. Petersburg Kickers beat the New York Greek American Atlas team back in 1989, which I have to point out because we have people that are diehard U.S. Open Cup soccer fans on this podcast listening. So to Pablo and those other guys that are traditionalists, that's awesome that you guys were able to win it a second time. But you are part of history now, and that you've won it with multiple teams. So that's always really cool. Before we go on to kind of your off the field stuff, you've kind of developed this reputation as like a late game heroics guy. Is that go back to your visualization stuff, or is it just, you just do the most with the opportunities you're given?
I think maybe a little bit of both. Like I try to come on and, if I have been, especially this year, like a late game sub. And I think, Oscar trusts me in those moments, whether we're down a goal and we need somebody to work and, keep a clean sheet, or whether we're down a goal and we need somebody to go get a goal, or we're up a goal and we need somebody to just work and get a clean sheet. I think he trusts me in both of those situations. And I just try to get on there and bring energy and work, if we're losing 5-0 or we're winning 5-0, I'm sprinting after the center backs. I'm like doing everything I can to bring energy to the team. And luckily it's been paying off, especially these last couple of weeks where I've been able to get some goals. But every time I sub in, I believe like all it takes is one. That's the great thing about being a forward too, is you just need one moment. You could touch the ball one time and be the hero of the game. So it's a really good bargain to be a forward compared to a defender.
And I'd say late game heroics are important. Maybe John Herdman might need a guy to come in and do some late game heroics. I'm a big believer in talking things into existence. So I know we talked about going back to talking about Canada with the World Cup coming up. I know that you represented the country several times. You're at a position where it's just completely stacked with guys that are European names now. But my favorite thing that I read about you was you had a quote that said, if you're not called, you're still going to be their number one fan back over here if you're not on that trip. And I thought that was really cool. And you don't really see a lot of that, I think, with, I've interviewed other guys on this podcast and we've talked to other people, and they're not necessarily, I'm not saying that they aren't going to root for their country, but it's like they're so competitive and they think they're putting all this into it. And if they're not called, it's like a dead thing for them. I thought that was really cool. And maybe it's a testament to Canadian culture or just you as a person that you're able to say, look, I think I deserve to be there. I would love to be there. I think I had a lot of value. However, if I'm not called, I'm still going to be their biggest fan. So I don't know. I thought that was really cool. And if you want to talk on that, please do.
Yeah, I mean, all you can do is control the controllables, basically. Like, so all I can do is try to be the best player I can. And I think at the end of the day, like Herdman is gonna, he doesn't have an agenda. Like, he wants to win the World Cup. So whoever he brings, like, I hope that I'm in that squad. But if I'm not, I don't think it's because he slighted me. Like, I think it's because he believes the other guys are better. There's a lot of good players out there, So if I'm not there, all I can do is be happy for the guys that are there, and support the team. Like, I really want Canada to do well at this World Cup. It's an amazing opportunity for the country. So whether I'm there or not, like, I'm so excited for this moment for Canadian soccer, and I'm glad that I've even just been a part of this journey. Like, looking all the way back, I feel like I'm just playing with house money kind of at this point. Like, everything feels like a bonus to me. So I'm super grateful.
Well, I think that's really cool. So I'm a fan of our region. I'm a fan of, I'm rooting for the U.S., but I'm also rooting for the Canadians, and I'm rooting for the Mexicans and people that I know, guys around the league that are playing in other countries. I'm rooting for them too. As we could talk a different story when they're playing the U.S., but I'm pulling for you guys. Let's talk a little bit about the off the field stuff as we wind down. We did talk about education here. I thought it was really cool. I can say this with confidence that you are the only person that has been featured on this podcast who has an engineering degree and a master's degree in finance. And just typing that to get ready for this was it presented some problems for me. So that's a compliment to you. You were able to do this while still playing through in the league using the continuing education programs offered to the players. I thought that was something to be really proud of. Do you feel like your parents are proud of that? And I know they're proud of you as a player, but it's got to be a big thing for them that you've had such success in your educational career as well.
Yeah, my parents are definitely super proud of that. Even when I told them I was like leaving school, because I left like the school of mines early. When I told them I was going to do that, they were upset. They were like, "All right, you're cut off. Like, what if you make it, you make it." But they were not very happy with me. Luckily, it turned out well. And then even my father-in-law, when I asked him if I could like marry his daughter, he was like, yeah, I think you're a great guy, but you have to get an education. Like, you need to make sure you finish your degree and stuff. So, I think he's hopefully proud of me too. But I think just having like those kind of role models in your life to hold you accountable has been really good for me, and I think I've been able to make them proud.
Yeah, no, I think they should be proud. That's really impressive. I'm proud of you if no one else is. I'll be your fan. With all that knowledge running through your head, you've recently and in the past you've done some things, but recently you're getting a lot of love for some of the stuff that you're doing, trying to put it to good use. For those that have followed you, they know you've been an active real estate investor for a long time. I think you and Hollingshead, there's a couple guys that you have that are into it as well. We talked about that before. There's guys now getting more involved in different financial things that I think are good for their long-term success. But for you look at real estate not only as an investment, but you've started to focus on it as a tool. Can you talk to people that are listening about affordable housing as an issue that you've really become passionate about?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like I initially just got interested in real estate as an investment, but now I see it as kind of a tool to improve society. So I see like in my opinion, there's so many important issues to work on in the world. And I was interested in a lot of them, like financial education, diversity, education in general, like health, the climate, all this stuff. And when I started to think about it, housing is really at the bottom of it in so many different ways. So, like getting a person into an affordable house, and affordable housing can mean for people who are low income, but people like that are middle class need affordable housing for themselves too. So, affordable housing is for everyone. So, getting people into an affordable, safe house is just really sets the backbone for the rest of their life to be good. And then, I started taking that even further and looking into the way like we design our neighborhoods and our cities, and I started learning about the benefits of like walkable communities and urbanism. And it's so powerful, honestly. There's just the list of benefits goes so deep. Like with the living in walkable communities are better for people's health. It's better for the climate. It's better for people financially. Like there's just so many different ways in which it's better. And I'm trying to like spread the word because I feel like this is the solution, like, and it makes people happy. Like it's just so interesting. I'm really passionate about it. So my Twitter feed is only that. If you don't want to hear about that, you shouldn't follow me on Twitter because that's all I talk about. I can't get enough of it. So I love it.
No, it's creating some headlines, and I know you've done, the news and different outlets are really picking it up. Talk a little bit about the thing I like is, we're going to talk about YIMBY here and how you got involved with YIMBY, but it's more about you using your voice, and there's a lot of people that I don't want to steal your thunder, but there's a lot of people that have really good causes and they're trying to raise awareness to different things. And you are using your voice, and you have a little bit more of a voice than maybe the average guy. And that's what's really cool about it. But just talk a little bit, shed some light on YIMBY and what you're doing there.
Yeah, I mean, I think just like in general, athletes, of course, we're very interested in our sport, but every single athlete is also interested in other stuff. But for whatever reason, a lot of people just don't talk about it much publicly. And I just decided, you know what, like I want to just tell the world what I'm interested in. Like I think I have some interesting thoughts to share. So I started sharing it, and the feedback has been really good. I first kind of started talking a lot about financial education, now switching to like YIMBY urbanism stuff. And YIMBY means yes in my backyard. So just we kind of advocate for like building more housing because housing is unaffordable. Basically, it's just supply and demand, the way that I'm looking at it. Like it's unaffordable because we don't have enough housing in good areas. So I'm really advocating to build more housing, but specifically more housing in like the best parts of town, which usually they're blocking that from happening. So I'm just kind of trying to be out here advocating for that because I think if people can get affordable housing in good locations, it can be really change society for the better.
Yeah, no, when I looked into it, there's stuff I learned, just about, like you said, the deed restrictions, or, you can only build a single 1-story house, or no duplexes, no multiple housing in the same area, row
Yeah,
houses.
it's illegal. Like most people don't know that, but it's
Yeah.
illegal in most neighborhoods, even in like, so say Orlando, like there's suburbs around Orlando, but in Orlando itself, the big city, it's illegal in most of the city to build anything but a single family house. Like that kind of just doesn't make sense. And it really restricts the supply of housing in the best areas. So what you have is to get an affordable house, people need to go 45 minutes outside of the city. You have to spend all your time commuting. You have to spend a ton of money commuting. You lose so much. So instead, like, why not just it destroys the environment because you have to keep expanding the city further and further into like the Florida wetlands. Like it's bad for the environment. More driving is bad for the environment. So let's just put people where we already are. Like put more people in the city where there's access to jobs, there's access to public transportation, there's access to like services like the police and schools, all that stuff.
Yeah, well, clearly you're passionate about it. You did mention Twitter. Tesho is on social media, Twitter and Instagram. Follow him if you want to see posts about, things that he's doing on the field, his family. He's obviously going to promote the things that he's passionate about, which I think is a positive. So I would encourage you to follow him on there. Tesho, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and telling your story. It's a really fascinating story. I think it's your views on things align a lot with kind of how I see the world in terms of not only improving it, but self-introspection and trying to visualize good things. So I hope you keep doing that. Hopefully you're able to make the cut for the World Cup. But I know right now you're focused on a playoff run. I wish you luck in that. And that's Tesho Akindele, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's great. And I think what you're doing, letting the players tell their stories in their own words is super powerful. We don't get a lot of opportunity to kind of deep dive into our own stories. So I appreciate you giving us that opportunity.
Well, it's easy when they're great stories like yours. So I appreciate your time today. I know our listeners do too.
Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you for listening to Play by Players. Visit playbyplayerspod.com for more episodes or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
This has been a production of the MLSPA. Learn more at mlsplayers.org.